How do you rebuild an aircraft while still in flight? I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Rashi Khurana. She is the Director of Engineering at Shutterstock. Welcome, Rashi.
Hi, Tanya. Thanks for having me.
Okay, most of us know what Shutterstock is. Maybe we've used Shutterstock in the past. Talk about your role there.
So I'm Director of Engineering at Shutterstock. Shutterstock, for people who don't know what it is a global technology company offering creative platforms, tools, and services for managing high-quality assets, right? So there's two-place marketplace. Like there's customers who want to buy these assets and there are contributors who want to sell these assets. My role here is I'm managing both the experiences from the front-end perspective. So I have the teams that are actually building the platform for buying the content and then building the platform for contributing the content. The contributors are these artists and photographers. So I'm managing those teams.
You recently spoke in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest about business as usual while revamping a decade of code. Tell us what that conversation was about.
So that's a very basic thing that all companies go through. So what happens, like time and again, when technologies evolve, or not even evolve, when they get outdated, whatever we built our platforms for, it doesn't scale anymore. Or for instance, the look and feel that we built 10 years ago doesn't cater to the audience of today because it's changed so much. Or we're not able to extend our platform. So when those technologies and things change, it's time when companies have to reevaluate and say, all right, we need to now build for the current and the future, and they have to redo the whole thing again. So that's what the talk was about, is like, how do you invest your resources in redoing what you've already done to give a better experience to our users, still running your business? So like in the talk, I mentioned like it's changing the engine of the plane while you're still flying the plane. That's basically it. It's like you're redoing the whole thing again.
Shutterstock's been around a long time. You've actually, as a tech company, you stood the test of time when many others were unsuccessful. What are some of the key factors that you had to consider as you made this transformation? Because it's worked up to this point.
Yeah. So I think like when a project like this comes to a company, I think the first most important thing that everybody needs to understand is that it's not going to be easy. It's a very complex project. It's gigantic. It's going to take time. And are we ready to invest our time and resources in doing this project, right? Because you cannot rush it. Migrations and transformations generally take like 2 years on an average, even more. I spoke to somebody after the conference and their company's been working for 10 years on a migration. So it takes time, and that commitment is required from business, from stakeholders, from everybody, from engineering to, dedicate yourself to it. And then once you have buy-in that, this is what the company is doing, and I think the most important thing is like planning for it, because if you don't plan it, then obviously you're not ready for all the things that will come up. And when I say planning, it's a lot of facets in planning that you have to consider, right? So one of them, the first most important, would be a technology planning. Like, how do you migrate your data? Because you have billions and billions of rows of data. How do you migrate that from old systems to the new systems? How do you plan for your new architecture? Is the architecture robust? That's one of the biggest key things. Like, are you building the right architecture with the right design patterns? Do you have the right teams to build it? So are you planning for the skill sets? Do you have the skills to actually do this migration? So that's like the technical architectural perspective of planning. And then comes the process part of it, right? Because it's a project that's kicked off at the level of the whole company. A whole company is actually executing towards a common goal. How do you execute together? So collaboration becomes very important. Transparency becomes very important. So planning for those processes, like how would you collaborate? How would you collaborate when 15 teams are coming together, right? How would you tell each other that you're blocking me, I'm blocking you, there's a cyclic dependency. How do we unblock each other? Right? So that's a part of the process that we need to figure out upfront. Then you have to plan for revamping. So basically, you're not just, just revamping your code. Your code has become outdated. Your technology has become outdated. You're actually revamping your whole website. So can you give something for your customers to be excited about? Is it better UI? Is it better features? Are you planning for innovation for your product and designers? Can they be challenged to go and look what's working in the marketplace, what's not, what your competitors are doing, and how do you want to get ahead of the game? So planning for that. So planning, it's an exhaustive list of planning. The biggest thing here is planning. You have to plan to make sure that your customers are engaged, because you can't throw these bombshells at them and expect them to take it. You have to communicate to them saying, hey, we are going through a transformation phase and you will see changes to the website. Some of it may be disruptive and you may not like it. So you have to engage with them and constantly hear them, like take feedback from them. We've had, while we were doing our transformation, such amazing feedback from our customers saying, hey, we don't like what you just did. And we had to listen to them and, iterate and give them back something that we had taken away, for instance. So that's also very important. And then obviously the last thing that I always mention is that you always have to celebrate. You have to plan to celebrate that, because it can be a very tiring process. It can be very, boggling for the engineering teams and the product teams to be doing for a system that's already been there, but it's just outdated. They're redoing it. So how do you start celebrating those small milestones? You've got a project that's going to span 2 years. Now, how do you celebrate month 1, second project, third project, more data, more traffic? So just putting those milestones and celebrating. So I think those are some of the things, most importantly being planning.
So you talked about engaging your customers. How far in advance do you let them know that you're making changes? I mean, there are many other tech companies that have not followed that same piece of advice in engaging customers and listening to customers. So how far in advance of making changes do you start bringing in the customers?
So that's very interesting. The first time we thought about engaging our customers was when we actually had a plan that, hey, this is the next project we are working on, and what would be the impact to our customers for that project. So for instance, I'll give an example of our content editor. This is a tool that our customer contributors are using to upload their content and submit their content. So they go to this tool and they upload their content and they tag metadata. So they say, this is the title, this is the description for the media that I'm uploading. So search can index it and Google can find it. So that was a tool we were building, and the UI look and feel of it was completely changing. So we sent emails to our contributors, I think a month and a half in advance of the change when it was coming. And we told them what the change was. We told them that, we're using a computer vision service, that your keywords will be auto suggested to you. So we explained all of it to them in detail, saying, hey, this is what we shared designs with them, a month and a half, that, okay, these are the new designs. So get familiarize yourself with it, because it is going to change on you. And this is a very crucial part of your workflow. So if you're used to doing a certain kind of workflow for 10 years, this is a big change for you. So we did that. We warmed them up. We're very lucky to have a very engaged community of contributors through our forums, where they're generally always talking. So we even use that platform to communicate and say, this is our next phase of transformation and this is the feature that's coming out. But all surprises, we did hear negative feedback when we released it. So it wasn't all, frills when we released it. We did hear people say, okay, it's slowing down our workflow because, we have a lot of scrolling involved here. And then we had to make the change and make it we had to change the design to make it better for them to work with. So yeah, a month and a half is what our average has been in communicating.
Are you using artificial intelligence to help customers search for the right content?
For searching for the right content, we have a lot of machine learning algorithms that we train our data to say, okay, what is being searched. So there's a lot of complex algorithm that goes behind for search.
And kind of taking a step back to when you actually made the migration, how did you determine, because that's a lot of extra work, how did you determine how many people you need? Did you bring in tech support from contractors, or did you migrate people in terms of from other teams? I mean, how did you look at the team structure and as a whole?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, because if you're already running your business, right? And you already have your day-to-day stuff that's coming, your critical bugs, your new projects that the stakeholders want to build. So you can't have the same team do that work and also do transformation. So you want to make sure that you are actually augmenting your teams enough so that they can sustain through this. Like when I say augmenting, you're not going to double your teams, but you're still going to make sure that there's an extra 1 or 2 people on every team. To your point about like, do you go consulting? Do you go like contracting for that work? I definitely think that's not the best way of doing it, because the teams that are building it need to feel the ownership of owning it and maintaining it after it's actually built. So when you just give it to somebody else to build one, they don't have the expertise, because if it's like my image team or the contributor team, the team that's already doing the business day to day knows the system so well, so that when they are building it, they already know what's missing, what's lacking, where they want to optimize. If you give that project to somebody who's never worked on it, you're already missing all the learnings and all the knowledge that was already built and uncovered through years of experience. So you want to make sure that the same team is involved in doing the transformation that has been running the business and that will continue to run the business.
Was there anything that you did during the transformation, the recent transformation, that now you look back and that you wish you'd done it differently, kind of a hindsight kind of piece of advice for those maybe entering their own transformation?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing we didn't think through very much is like our APIs. Like, we took a top-down like UI first approach to innovation. We had a lot of new technologies we wanted to use for UI and, state management. We went from a very old Mason stack, Perl stack, which was a monolithic stack, to a service-oriented Node.js stack with React on it. So I think one thing we didn't think through maybe completely was our APIs, where, how we could have consolidated a little bit of that and cleaned those up front. But that's what we're doing now. So once we've done the transformation, we have a new website, we've raised the curtains on it for our customers and contributors. Now we're doing a little bit of behind the scenes cleanup.
Thank you so much, Rashi, for your advice and how to revamp a decade of code. I can't think of a better organization to help us figure that out. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they have some more questions for you on how to go about their own transformation. How could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so feel free to tweet me at my handle is RAKHURANA, Ra Khurana. So tweet me or send me a message on LinkedIn.
Thank you again so much. And if you want to connect with me, you can do so right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe find me on Twitter. I like to tweet at Tanya Hall Radio, or find me on Facebook by searching for The Tanya Hall Show.